So shame works very differently in public versus private. In private, shame works to conceal what we've done so that it's not found out, so that we're not judged or exiled. In public, shame is used as a teaching tool so that we adjust the behavior of people in the community for the benefit of the community and ultimately for that person. This is why shame isn't necessarily a bad for the individual who is receiving the shame. No one likes shame. That's the idea. It's very uncomfortable, and that's meant to be a, corrective measure. But it's so uncomfortable that if we can hide our mistakes, we will. So the polarities of shame kind of work like this. It's very difficult to keep whatever's going on, right? Whatever action you took that you fear it's going to be a source of judgment, right? It's very difficult to keep that in this flowy center ground. Like here we have private confrontation or self-correction, right? So when, a teacher says, hey, so-and-so stay after class. And then they tell you like, hey, I really don't appreciate you, passing notes and being disruptive. Can you cut it out? And you're like, yes, Miss Smith, I'll do that. She didn't shame you in front of the whole class, but you received correction and you said, all right, I don't want to, this person was cool to me. They do have a point. All right, I'll button up. This space right here is where a lot of the nuances of human communication come in. People who can exist in this sphere well and with a lot of comfort end up being fantastic in, there are a lot of different careers where this is an extremely beneficial skill set to have. But no matter, oftentimes people who work in these sectors like law or medicine or, therapists, because they spend so much of their professional life in this space, their private life often ends up taking on a lot of concealment. So imagine you have a ball at the top of this parabola, and it would be difficult for the ball to just kind of hang out here somewhere at the top. Its tendency is going to be either to keep a sort of balance here in the middle ground or immediately fly off into one of the other directions, right? It's very difficult to keep our activities in this nice flowy middle ground of private confrontation and private, instruction and, admitting your mistake and learning from it, all that. Generally speaking, it doesn't go that way. Either things become public and people desire to teach us how to be different, or it's not public, no one knows, and therefore we desire to conceal it. So what we're really talking about here today is everything on the right side of the curve. Everything that we desire to conceal, which a lot of stuff's going to happen. We're going to do a lot of stuff, and stuff's going to happen to us, which we will blame ourselves for. So a lot of the events of our life, whether it's something we did or something that happened to us, it's going to fall over into this category, a lot of it. So one takeaway, once you have a few mistakes fall into this conceal category, let's say, you break the law a couple times and you're like, okay, I got lucky. I've been speeding on the way to work. Like I've done it 3 times. Listen, I'm going to get caught one of these times if I keep doing this. So you know what? Stop. Just don't screw up, right? Stop the behavior. Sometimes concealment does accrue shame, which causes us to change our behavior. Other times we just accrue more and more things in this side of the bucket. We just gather more and more things in our shame bucket, so to speak. And if our goal is to just not screw up, life is just a ticking time bomb, basically. And it's only a matter of time before we do, because we're human. If we don't make the mistake that we're actively trying not to make, we make a different mistake that we didn't have our eye on that ball because we were so focused on not screwing up here. So we inevitably screw up. We inevitably do things for our own well-being that we're afraid other people would judge. So a lot of things fall into this bucket, whether they should or not, they do. So here we have, actual crimes, piracy. Maybe you stream a movie illegally online. Maybe you steal something. Maybe you did something that was like just an act of self-care, but you feel super guilty for it and you wouldn't want anybody to know. Like maybe you put on a movie for your kids and went and took a bath and ignored them for an hour, maybe you'd feel super guilty about that. A lot of moms would, even though that's really an act of self-care that's ultimately good for everybody, or there's some kind of evidence of your crimes, right? But we have to realize that this we're not talking about objective right and wrong. There's subjectivity involved. It's not so much what's right or wrong, it's what would people judge me for, right? It's not, you're not wondering, hey, was it objectively wrong for me to take a bath while my kids watched whatever? Oftentimes you don't think that, and that's why you did it. Really, we're dealing with subjectivity. So you could be here in this sliver of, hey, I did a thing, I don't actually think it's wrong, but everyone else is going to have a negative view of it. So that means that there's now a risk, whether we think what we did was right or not. There's an incentive to keep it private. Or oftentimes the group that would have a negative attitude toward what we've done is not the majority. They could be a plurality or even a minority, but there may be a very loud minority that, and the loud minority is something that we're going to fear. So we have to understand that shame has subjectivity at its core. There's not an objective reason to have shame. It's always subjective. It's always a calculation about what are other people thinking? How would they rank this against other crimes, so to speak? And so we create this image of society, of the group, almost like a person or a many-headed beast, but one entity that sums up all the other. And we're constantly asking ourselves, what would this other think about what we're doing? And this dictates what we keep private and what we allow to be public.